So that is a wrap on Democratic primary debate number 6, and we are back to take a look at all of the best moments, Saagar.
That's right. We got a wide variety of friends in the show joining in a bit, including Jennifer Holdsworth and Brianna Joy Gray. But right now, Ryan Grimm, the Intercept's D.C. bureau chief, he's with us here at the desk. And before that we get that to you, Ryan, just one second. We need to talk a little bit. Yeah. All right. So, Krystal, I mean, I think we both agreed we had two unambiguous big moments from the night. The first really was Bernie Sanders calling out Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden on their billionaire donations. Let's take a listen to that. That was unequivocally the biggest moment.
Yeah. My good friend Joe, and he is a good friend, he's received contributions from 44 billionaires. Pete, on the other hand, is trailing. Pete, you only got 39 billionaires contributing. So, Pete, we look forward to you. I know you're an energetic guy and a competitive guy, to see if you can take on Joe on that issue.
Nicole Wallace once said that Pete was like chicken soup for her heart or something, like that moment right there. It's chicken soup for my soul. Yeah. Because we've been wondering, when is Bernie gonna get feisty? When is he gonna draw these distinctions? Here, he is so good on this issue. It's such a clear distinction that he has really above the entire field. And he lands the blow, and he makes Pete look sort of like silly and childish as this young, overambitious achiever in the process.
And the real reason it stuck out to me, it was the first offensive move that we've seen yet from Bernie against Joe Biden. That was, and actually, by my count, one of the only offensive moves made by any of the candidates against Joe Biden on the stage. That's why I called it out, and I think it is the most significant moment. But broadly, this is part of the issue. Yes, that was one of the only moments in which he called out Biden. He had another great moment, which we're going to play a little bit later, when they sparred significantly on health care, Medicare for all versus the public option. But in both cases, Biden really became unscathed here. I mean, he was, what, 4th or 5th in the amount of speaking time? We're going to have the producers check on that and tell me what that is. Yeah, it's a very good thing for him. The more he doesn't talk, the more the other candidates go at each other, particularly Pete Buttigieg. It was a great moment for him. So despite the fact there were some clear distinctions made by Bernie and by Joe Biden, I think Biden came away relatively unscathed here.
I think there were a few big storylines of the night. I certainly think that is one of them, that Biden essentially comes out unscathed, although there was a moment we're going to talk about later that could come back to bite him big time were he the nominee. But I agree with you. I think he comes out unscathed, doesn't really sustain any blows that will ultimately hurt him. On the other hand, the other storyline, the other character in that little play we showed you, Pete Buttigieg, was under fire all night, and he really struggled to respond to some of the attacks. This is the first time we've really seen him take on water. On one of these debates, he and Elizabeth Warren sparred. I thought that was more or less a draw on Money in Politics, because she has her own sort of issues and isn't exactly completely pure there as well. Had that moment with Bernie Sanders, but also Amy Klobuchar got in on the action here.
She did. She stepped up
pretty effectively, going after him for his lack of experience. Let's take a look at that.
Yes, longer coattails, that matters.
Thank you, Senator. Denise?
I got to respond to that. Senator, I know that if you just go by vote totals, maybe what goes on in my city seems small to you. If you want to talk about the capacity to win, try putting together a coalition to bring you back to office with 80% of the vote as a gay dude in Mike Pence's Indiana.
Again, I would, Mayor, if you had won in Indiana, that would be one thing. You tried, and you lost by 20 points.
That was a pretty brutal moment.
Pretty brutal. And by the way, Ryan Grimm, who we're just about to bring in, fact check, it was actually 25, so she was a little bit off, but blow lands nevertheless. Yeah, it was a rough night for Pete, I think, overall. And I think ultimately, he also is going to suffer, and Warren is going to suffer from the fact that Amy Klobuchar had probably her best debate. And if we thought that, you know the pundits over on the other networks are going crazy about what she did. But let's go ahead and bring in Ryan Grimm, D.C. Bureau Chief of the Intercept, the man himself. Did I get that fact check?
Yeah.
Right? Is that accurate?
25 points. Yeah, 25.
What did they say? She was being Minnesota nice by giving him 5.
Minnesota nice. But and here's the thing. So he lost this statewide race for treasurer by 25 points to a guy named Richard Murdoch, who you guys may remember, because 2 years later, he lost a Senate race to Joe Donnelly.
That's right.
So don't come out here and say that the guy was unbeatable, that beat you by 25 points. He's the guy that lost, if you remember, because he said something like, well, if there's a rape, it's because God wanted it to happen.
It was in that whole Todd Aiken moment. That was not the greatest.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Ryan, what were your other broad takeaways from tonight? We know that Pete Buttigieg had a very, very rough night. I mean, broadly, Biden unscathed. I have the numbers down in front of me. Biden, he spoke the 5th. He was number 5 in terms of speaking time, only 15 minutes. Bernie Sanders topping the field with 20. Who won and who lost tonight? What do you think?
Well, the entire field needs Joe Biden, as we were talking about before the debate, to be seen by people as unelectable. And nobody really, landed any blows on his electability here. If Biden and Bernie share the most overlap between voters, then him doing well kind of hurts Bernie, even though Bernie had a very, very good night. Now, since Warren and Buttigieg share a lot of voters, him doing poorly helps her. But like you said, because Amy did well, it'll be interesting to see in the next week if Buttigieg starts to fade, and this is kind of the beginning of the end of the Mayor Pete thing that we witnessed. If his people go to Warren, she's well positioned to then say, oh, she had a problem and now she's coming back up in Iowa. If his people go over to Amy Klobuchar, then what else can she do? Because she had a great night, and if that's not enough to turn it around, it's hard to see how she recovers.
That's an excellent point.
I thought Warren was fine. I thought she had some good moments, some good quips. I didn't think she necessarily stood out in a way that would cause her to gain those voters back from Pete. What I would expect to happen is maybe Amy grabs a few, Pete keeps some, Warren, and the race basically stays where it is, which essentially is a win for certainly Biden, but also I would say Bernie. But that's been kind of the story of all of these debates is Biden's got his people. They're with him. They're not really going anywhere. Bernie's got his people. They're with him. They're not really going anywhere. And so all of the movement out of these debates has been among that sort of professional managerial class, white, affluent liberal who's still very unsettled. I mean, if you look at the numbers for Warren, it's only about 30% who say they're solidly with her of her supporters. Same for Pete. It's only about 30%. That's where all the shopping and shifting is going on among that demographic and with those candidates. And
the handicap for Biden is the way that the primaries are structured. If you just went into a Super Tuesday right out the gate, he probably wins with like 30% and does the Jimmy Carter thing. We just keep winning 30% until it's over. But unfortunately for him, he has to win Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, where he's trailing or struggling in all of those. And if he loses those, then you might start to see his support fade from people who were like, wait a minute, I thought Joe was the guy who was going to beat Trump, but he can't even beat Bernie Sanders in Iowa. He can't beat Bernie in New Hampshire. He's losing to Warren in Nevada, whatever it is. And then even in South Carolina, where Bernie's creeping on him. He does poorly, and then he goes into Super Tuesday, and people are like, well, we didn't like the guy to begin with. We were only with him because he was going to win. Now he's losing. I think there was a good point made, and I wish I could remember who made it. Hopefully it's not you, and I'm just repeating it back to you. But, claim it
the Obama surge in South Carolina, because this is he wins Iowa, I mean, that gives him the momentum, and then he wins South Carolina. All the African-American community rallies behind him. That didn't come out of nowhere. He was doing the work. They were organized on the ground. They were going around the established channels of power in barbershops and beauty shops. They had a whole program so that they could translate that momentum into success in South Carolina. The only candidate that I know of who is set up in a similar way to capitalize on that momentum is Bernie Sanders in South Carolina. But I wonder if you see otherwise from other campaigns.
No, that's right. Certainly in terms of organizing structure. Because Bernie has put in this distributed organizing effort, which is empowering volunteers on the ground. And if people want to test it right now, they can go to the Sanders website and type in any zip code in South Carolina and say, like, show me an event near me. And you'll see probably row after row after row of phone banking, of canvassing, of friend mapping, all of these events that volunteers have been putting together in South Carolina, Nevada, Super Tuesday states, et cetera. Whether or not that's enough to move the needle, we don't know because it's never been tried at scale like this. It's how Bernie won in Burlington.
It's more about having that scale on the ground in the case ready to seize on success. But let me ask you this, Ryan, which is that now if we see Mayor Pete begin to fade in this, particularly in the states of Iowa and New Hampshire, who is going to benefit in those two states? I guess everything else staying equal. Is it Bernie or is it Elizabeth Warren? How does that shake out?
Well, we'll find out because if people had moved off of Warren because they're done with her, then then she's finished. But if it's this thing where people are like, yeah, I liked Warren, but now I'm not so sure. I like Pete. Oh, now I'm not so sure. Actually, Warren was okay. Then I think it is to Warren's benefit, particularly because New Hampshire is this dual home turf for both Sanders and Warren, who from Massachusetts. So whoever kind of comes out of Iowa with the momentum then kind of gets that advantage in New Hampshire, which then flows into Nevada because they're both, again, they have their own advantages. Sanders in Nevada, working class state, predominantly Hispanic. It's a caucus state. He did well in 16. He could do well again.
Strong union presence.
Strong union presence. On the other hand, Reed is still very dominant there. Reed seems to like Elizabeth Warren. So there's he swings a lot of votes there.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask you about Andrew Yang's performance tonight. Once again, he gets the least speaking time. This time it was 8 minutes and something instead of 6 minutes.
2 minutes
of course,
more than last.
There's fewer candidates on the stage, so you would expect him to get more just in the natural course. But I thought he made very effective use of those minutes. I mean, out of the gates, maybe somewhat controversial, but I thought very strong comments on impeachment. I thought he had an excellent answer on the economy and how you can run in a time when the GDP growth is good and the stock market is high. And he talks about life expectancy is dropping. I mean, the metric of how people are dying earlier, and he captured that. What did you think of how he performed tonight?
Yeah, I think that Democrats need to do a better job of recognizing what it is about his message that is resonating with people and adopting those pieces of it.
True.
The focus on the opioid epidemic as a function of deindustrialization and as a kind of symptom of decay of the United States. That's a key thing to focus on. Automation, like this is stuff that people are deeply anxious about. But then there's the weird stuff where he talks about thorium, and he he's clearly like read a Wikipedia page about nuclear power, and that's what people love about him because he's willing to try anything. But then you're like, not so sure that this is actually going to solve the problem. And I loved his line. You're probably wondering what I'm doing up here.
Right, America's
like, you're right. Actually,
self-aware. I thought it was a phenomenal answer from him.
Yeah,
I really did.
he more than anyone really showcases his sense of humor, which I think is a very appealing quality as well. He doesn't take himself too seriously.
He's genuinely funny.
He's an endearing guy.
He is an endearing guy, as are you, Ryan.
That's right, Ryan.
We're always grateful to have your thoughts and insights. Thank you so much, sir.
Love being here.
Absolutely.
Next up, we're going to have Bernie Sanders' National Press Secretary, Brianna Joy Gray. We're going to have PCCC's Adam Green to talk about Elizabeth Warren. And we're also going to have Mayor Pete's surrogate, Jennifer Holdsworth. They're going to take their spots around the table and share their reactions to the politics discussed on the big stage. But first, we wanted to take a look back at that moment with Andrew Yang. Is that what we're talking about? No, we're going to do Bernie Sanders.
I thought we were going to be talking about Bernie Sanders, but we'll also be talking about that.
Sorry, it's been a long night already. But lots of energy still to go. So Bernie Sanders had an interesting exchange with the moderator. It ended up talking about the intersection of climate justice and racial justice. Let's take a look at that while we bring our surrogates in.
That's right.